So I guess we can go ahead and hop right into, well, let's do this sacrifice. So the sacrifice so we know that Enoch, Jubilees, and Canaan, no matter where you go, you see the sacrifices, the new moons, the Sabbaths, so chodesh, whatever you want to call it. So yes, that doesn't literally mean new moon, but still, we have more than enough evidence to say that it's a separate date, and we'll get into that later here in a minute. But there are sacrifices that must be completed. So there is, there's continual burnt offering, which is done by Yehoshua now, but was done by the priests back then. There were sin offerings. And then there are, right here, and on the Sabbath day, 2 lambs of the first year without spot, and 2/10 deals of flour for a meat offering mingled with oil and a drink offering thereof. This is the burnt offering of every Sabbath, beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. It is very important that people should learn about these sacrifices, because it would make a lot of the calendar stuff make a lot more sense when you realize some calendars make these sacrifices impossible to complete. If your calendar makes these sacrifices impossible, odds are something's wrong with the calendar, because God is not going to make it impossible for you to fulfill these sacrifices on his calendar. That makes no sense. So every 7-day Sabbath has a specific 2 lambs, 2/10 deals flour for meat mingled with oil. This is repeated somewhere else too. And then what? In the beginnings of your months. And just to show you what this is actually saying here, because we have the Sabbath day, the 7-day Sabbath day, and then we have in the beginning of your months, this actually here, and in the beginnings of your months, Rosh Chodesh. So again, we're seeing that same word. Now, they love to translate it differently regularly, but that is what that says. So the Sabbath has a sacrifice, and then Chodesh has a sacrifice. So this is the Chodesh sacrifice. In the beginnings of your months, ye shall offer a burnt offering to Yehovah, 2 young bullocks and 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without spot. These are 2 separate sacrifices. So you have a sacrifice that must be done on a Sabbath, which is, I guess if you're on Saturday, that would be every Saturday you would do this one. And then every first of the month, you would do this one.
Keep going down, because it describes more, and I just want to see if there's anything like symbolism in it.
And 3/10 deals of flour for a meat offering, which was kind of like the meat offering before, mingled with oil for 1 bullock, and 2/10 deals of flour for a meat offering, mingled with oil for 1 ram. And a several tenth deal of flour mingled with oil for a meat offering unto 1 lamb, for a burnt offering of a sweet savor, a sacrifice made unto fire, or made by fire unto Yehovah. And their drink offerings shall be half a hin of wine unto a bullock, and the 3rd part of a hin unto a ram, and a 4th part of an hin unto a lamb. This is the burnt offering of every month throughout the months of the year. And 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering unto the Lord, or unto Yehovah, shall be offered beside the continual burnt offering and his drink offering. And then this is Passover eventually. But again, the sacrifices are different. So I'm gonna pause on that, not literally pause in the video, pause on that thought until I get to a calendar here in a minute to show you what I mean. But Genesis 1, again, just to read it again. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide from the night, day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and days and years. So let them be for, if I can find it. So for the feasts, for days. Okay. So the reason why I want to bring this up. So let's remember our sacrifices here. So on the Sabbath, which for the solar calendar, which is the Gregorian calendar, which uses pagan names all throughout it. Each month is pagan. Each day of the week is pagan. Okay. Point number 1. But number 2, the sacrifices. The Sabbath on the Sabbath day, which is on the solar calendar, would be every Saturday, because you guys are not are trying to hold on to a non-broken up, supposedly 6 days of work, 1 day of rest. So that means you have 2 different sacrifices to fulfill. You have a Saturday sacrifice to fulfill every Saturday. And then on the 1st of the month, you have to do a different sacrifice, okay? So this is a Sunday in January. So in January, your chodesh would be Sunday. So the week beforehand in December, you had a Sabbath on Saturday, and now you have a Sabbath Sunday. Not bad, but then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a rest day on day 6. Okay. Broken up first month of the year. Next month, your chodesh is on Wednesday. So that's 1, 2, 3, break, 1, 2, break. There is not a 6-1 schedule here. So you're doing a chodesh, a chodesh, a chodesh. So Wednesday, and then Saturday. Now this is the issue that I'm seeing. If you come and you have a chodesh on the 1st of every month, right? Your 1st falls on a Saturday in April. Are you going to do your chodesh sacrifice, or are you going to do your Sabbath sacrifice? And then Monday, the next month. So you have the 30th here is a day. So you have Saturday, the 29th is a rest, and then the 30th is a non-rest day, and then the 1st is going to be another chodesh. So you have 1 day and then another Sabbath, or not a Sabbath, but a chodesh. Every single month, you either have a broken up 6-1 cycle, or you have a chodesh and a Sabbath on the same day, which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and so the argument there is some people are saying that the new moon isn't a Sabbath. So they're either just not keeping it, or because we're not doing the sacrifices now, obviously, they don't see physically how it would be it wouldn't really be possible. Okay. You know what I mean?
But again, with my Leviticus 1 example, what is the burnt offering for the chodesh? Where is it? In the beginning of your months. 2 young bullocks and 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without spot.
Yeah. No,
Yehoshua. I know you're saying that, but I'm just reiterating it for them. You are sacrificing, you're putting your hand on Yehoshua's head in the beginnings of the months, which is commanded of us.
And
it's still a sacrifice. It's still a required sacrifice. You bring it of your own free will on the days that you're supposed to bring them, of which the new moons is listed in Enoch, Jubilees, and in the Canaanite Bible.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
And then we have Isaiah, 66, 23, I believe, where it says that we will come to worship from Sabbath to Sabbath, new moon
to new moon. And again, for those arguing that it's just Chodesh and it's the beginning of the month, that's fine. You can argue that it doesn't literally mean new moon, but you still have the exact same problem, the beginning of the month. When is the beginning of your month? And what day, what sacrifice? Obviously, we're not doing the sacrifices, but these are 2 separate days. You have a solar calendar that breaks them up. It breaks up your 6-1 cycle. The 6-1 cycle is never broken by the Luni-Solar calendar because it's set by lunar. So every single month, you have 6 days work, 1 day rest. 6 days work, 1 day rest. You do that 4 times, and after the 4th time, you take an extra day off for new moon, which sets your next one. So there's never throughout your month is your cycle ever broken up, except for feasts such as the Week of Tabernacles, which we don't work at all. The Feast of Unleavened Bread. So obviously, no matter what calendar you're on, those are going to break up your cycle. But outside of the feast, nothing else should break up the 6-1 cycle. In the solar calendar, it's broken every single month. In the Luni-Solar calendar, it is not broken once throughout the month. So those who are saying, how do you explain breaking up the 6-1 cycle? The only calendar breaking up the 6-month cycle is the solar calendar. We're not breaking it up with the lunar solar. We at 4 weeks every month, we have the exact same 6-1 cycle. 4 weeks out of the month. That's not possible on a solar calendar. Again, when's your chodesh? You're taking a break here on Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, which is confusing because we have no idea what day that is. Is that a chodesh or is that a Monday, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday, Friday, Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday? Those are your chodeshes for the year. And therefore, it doesn't fit. It's not possible to keep those. But
do you have any other scriptures for this to look at?
The only other ones would be the Enoch and Jubilees.
I just want, because I wanted to look at the scriptures and then look at that one picture.
Yep.
Because
I'm not going to go over all of them in Enoch, just this one, but all you have to do is if you have Kindle or a computer or mobile version of Enoch and Jubilees, you can do a search for new moon and go through and read every single verse. But here, I guess just to go over the one, because you were saying full moon, so I'm just going to read this really quick. And on the first day, so the first day, she is called the new moon. On that day, the light rises on her. So we could say that on that day, the light rises, meaning it's full on her, maybe. But read the next line. She becomes the full moon exactly on the day when the sun sets in the west. Okay. On the first day, she is called the new moon. On the day she's full is when the sun sets in the west. So, the day that the light begins to rise on her is a new moon. And the day that it's full is when she's opposite the sun in the west. So every time you see a full moon, it's going to be the exact opposite side. Pretty much as the sun going down, the moon is coming up pretty much at the same time, and it's full. So those are opposite of each other, west and east. But again, just look at the way it's worded. On the first day, new moon. On the day, not on the first day, she's full. On the day when the full moon, or when she becomes full, is in the west, or sun sets in the west. All right, so really quickly, for example, it took me a while to find this, and this isn't like 2023 necessarily. They do have a calendar. WLC, you can get their app on your phone, and they have the calendar. But this is the difference between your chodesh, breaking up your weeks, and then your Sabbath's not making any sense, like your sacrifices, your monthly versus weekly sacrifices. So here, this is what happens. Here is new moon day, so your day 1 of the month, right? This is set up outside here. This sets your Sabbath days. So here, you would do your chodesh. Here, here, here. And then for the entire rest of the month, each time, you have this. 6 days of work, 1 day rest. 6 days work, 1 day rest. 6 days work, 1 day rest. 6 days work, 1 day rest. Okay? And then your feasts. This looks a little bit confusing here, but your feasts. But and then no, not every day necessarily has 30. This is a little bit, I don't know why they have that sitting there. Some are 30, some are 29, but for whatever, I think it's just because this isn't a specific year, so they just put the 30 there because some months may have it, some won't, depending on the year. This is just a generic, but that is the difference between, so you would have 4 7-day Sabbath sacrifices, and you would have a new moon day, That's either going to be like here or here, depending on what day, 30th, 31st, depending on the month. But it's going to be after your last Sabbath. So you Sabbath, 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 new moon, Sabbath, 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 new moon, Sabbath, 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 new moon. So this is a cycle which does not break up the 6-1, 6-1, 6-1. The only thing that does break it up are the feasts, just like with either calendar that would break it up anyway. But all your stuff happens on the Sabbath, and then there's always the working days for the rest of the month. Whereas, again, you're broken up here. Your chodesh is broken up. It's not logical. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense, and it breaks up your 6-1 cycle. So in response to the question of how do we explain the 6-1 cycle, I would actually point that question right back at anyone who follows the solar calendar, because actually ours isn't broken up. The solar's is broken up. But so that's it on that. And then here in just a second, I'm going to let Elena do the menorah here in just a minute. All right. So, I'm going to give that to you now, Elena.
Okay, so the last thing I wanted to point out is a lot of people are saying that because the moon wasn't made until day 4, that it can't, be what decides the Sabbath. But we know that the sun, moon, and stars were made on day 4, and so that we would be able to keep the appointed times in the calendar and all.
Super quick, I might be able to, maybe. I could be wrong, but that might be coming from the fact that light was actually made first. So the sun was not made. I think some people are looking at like light, let there be light, and people might be mistaking light for sun, but that's actually completely different. The light being made on day 1 is not the same as the sun being made on day 4. Those are two completely different lights. So maybe that might help, but that's all I could think of for that particular aspect. But yeah, anyway, keep going.
But I just wanted this for the visual, because when I am explaining it, when they say day 4, when I hear day 4, whenever I hear the number 4, I think of this now. So when they say it can't because of that, I don't look at it that way, because of this chiastic structure with that 7, that center, that number 4 is what the menorah stands on. And when you look at the menorah with the days of creation and all, you can layer all of these 7s on here, the feasts, you know what I mean? All this stuff here, and there's even more things that you could layer on here. But looking at that, we always know that 4 is like that middle, and it's like a stand. And Yeshua came on the 4th day of the 4,000th year of creation. The 4th feast, Holy Spirit was sent. That's where that stand is at. That's what the menorah stands on. So I don't think that that's like that is disproving the calendar at all. I think that kind of proves it, if anything. And I know that these people who do this whole teaching the creation gospel, I love the teachings. They're really good. They do follow Saturday and they hold by that. But I don't think that I think that this here, that 4th day thing, and saying that that's a reason to throw it away, that's not another reason. And another thing, there's a couple of it. Another thing people are saying is that because of the languages around the world for Saturday translate to Sabbath, that is a witness. That doesn't come from scripture, so it's not a witness. And then there's the fact that, can we trace Saturday all the way back to creation?
No.
We can't. We can't do that. So how are you going to say that you are so sure that the Saturday that you're keeping is that 7-day cycle, it's never been broken, and you're not on the wrong day? You cannot do that. So that is another reason that we cannot. This is more of my. I don't want to say that I'm keeping the proper Sabbath, because I know that I'm not keeping the Sabbath perfectly, and 2, I probably got it wrong.
I mean,
sometimes
we don't even have to go back to Bible times to say that we don't know what day Saturday it is, because it's not unknown that we may not be on the right date, because they have done so much fluff in the history books, and because they've done so much erasing and changing. Technically, you can't even speak to what year we're in, which is another reason why I don't think anyone could possibly know what day or whatever. We don't even know what year it is, to be
And that's why I
technically
think
accurate.
that-
We don't know what year it is. They've lied this whole time about where we're at in time and about our history. So how can you possibly know?
And with that being said, we need a stand. The sun, moon, and stars, they
Right.
what month it's in based off the constellations. The moon moves around. You know what I mean? Like it's just the way it works.
It's a
works
clock.
Just like a clock.
I mean, just get the Flat Earth Sun Moon Zodiac app. It literally, the sky is very literally a clock. I don't know how to say it any harder. It is a literal clock. There are different hands of the clock, the sun, moon, and stars, each of which are a different part of the hand of the clock. And without one of those hands, you don't actually have a precise time frame. you have an estimate.
The months are the moons, and they're the hour, and like the hours are broken up into quarters with the Sabbath. You know what I mean?
So the sun is your day, right? The sun tells you day and night, right? Then your months, and then your stars are your year because your stars repeat, okay? And it changes a little bit throughout the time with which constellation will rise in the morning.
But as you can see visually, it all stands on that day. You know what I mean? So when the sun, moon, and stars, that is how we would calculate. It tells us that's how we calculate it. But when you're looking at the menorah and you look at the fourth day and you see that there, and they say no to the fourth day, this immediately popped in my head. That is what it stands on. It stands on the fourth brand, the fourth day.
But
the sun.
We really shouldn't even need that because it literally says it in Genesis. I mean, come on, again. What more do you need than scripture specifically to tell you that on the fourth day, where is it? Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide day from night. Let them be for signs, moed, days, and years. Let them be. I don't think I should have to say any more than that. Like, you can't just say that. Not only that, but it's borderline worship, what we were talking about before. Because if you pick any one luminary above another and try to say the others are not necessary and not important and you shouldn't be following and it's terrible, that's God's creation, of which he said was for this specific reason. So if you're going to choose the sun over the moon, then you're preferring the greater light over the lesser light. You're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to prefer any greater over the lesser. That's no different than what was the one of the least of the commandments was do not favor the rich over the poor. Like, you can't pick one over the other. All of it is God's creation, okay? You can't say, well, I'm going to follow the stars, but not the sun and the moon because I believe the stars to be more accurate. I mean, the stars without the sun and the moon are not accurate because you're missing a good portion of the clock. The sun without the stars and the moon is by itself inaccurate because it's not 364 days. Actually, it's 365 days. So, technically speaking, if you follow any individual luminary, it is going to be off. You're going to, over like, come 5, 10, 15, 20 years, your calendar is going to be way off. If you follow solar, your seasons are eventually going to become off. If you follow lunar only, your seasons are going to fall off actually way quicker than just the solar, but the solar will be off too. So you can be off by solar, but a lot slower. You'll be off on the lunar a lot quicker though. You'll see the dramatic change a lot quicker with the lunar. But if you have a Luni-Solar, you remain on track because you constantly combine the two. You constantly refer back to each other to make sure you're still on the same time, like the right year, the right month, all of that. You can't do that without any aspect of creation that he made them to be for the times. But I think that's it. And I think the kids are a clear indication. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway.
kids, so you got to hear it all.
Right.
Yeah. I'll talk to you later.
All right, peace.